So, I'm going to be talking about The Mummy in a minute. But first I'm going to finish... Oh, I have the camera pointing in a totally wrong direction. So let's just straighten that out. I think that should be better. Anyway, I had already reviewed this, which I recommend. But there's... I found where I'd meant to talk about. So this is page 122, and
oh yeah, that's great.
Here he's talking about the steam pasteurizer designs and this and that, and he says he's seen people use plastic bins, barrels, coolers, and more. One friend uses a pallet with tarps and comforters wrapped around for insulation. Interesting, hey? So anyway, this person was very creative while writing this, and I would recommend. And what a wild name.
What's the name? Willoughby.
So I've already
That's like a last name. Yeah.
Drank my kale juice. I had just as much as I have given James here.
Okay.
And
just about as much as you can stand too, right?
I still have my celery to go, but I'll do it.
Well, celery juice. Well, you take the inside celery stuff. Like the celery stuff that you gave me was mercifully mild.
Yeah, the outside stuff is.
It's amazing.
Better than the inside's always bitter. I guess it's because it's yellow on the inside. I don't know why.
Maybe because it's younger.
Maybe.
You know.
But anyway.
The Mummy.
Yes. So I should have written out notes while I was doing this, but I figured, well, it's a fiction. I'm just going to read it like I read every other fiction. I did not take notes.
You got all the way through it, though. That's impressive.
Yeah. So this is The Mummy, a tale of the 22nd century by Jane Wells-Webb, actually, at this point. Not Loudon at all, and not just Webb.
Oh, it's one of those double-barreled English names?
She was a Jane Wells-Webb.
There we go.
And then she married, so then she was a Jane Wells-Webb's Loudon after that. So, anyway, but now, had I noticed this word right here,
abridgment.
I would not have borrowed this. This got shipped all the way from, I think it was from Edmonton. Just a moment. I've got to find some sort of mark in it to...
I hate abridgments.
Yep,
I cannot
University of Alberta Library.
Yeah.
I hate them. And I never would have borrowed this one. There were 2 copies I saw there. And I saw introduction. I must have saw that in the title. Or maybe there was a description about it. I would have... Yeah, that's what I would have saw. So there would have been a description about it saying that there was an introduction added by somebody presently, right? And I thought, oh, I would like to hear somebody else's views on this. Sure. Which, not really. I really didn't need to. And I would have liked to actually read the whole story, because now at some point I'm going to be like, well, I'm going to have to get the whole story just to know. Okay, so what this person did is they cut out 100 pages, I think they were saying. Do you remember, James?
I don't know.
Oh dear.
That's a ridiculous number.
So many pages.
Yeah.
And so I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, gosh, it seems choppy. And then I'm like, well, you cut out 100 pages. And so, for one thing, I can understand wanting to abridge. So it's pretty hefty. Because back at this period of time, people who read actually read. Now, nobody wants to read. So something this thick is probably too intimidating for most readers. So, anyway, as I was reading it, I'm like, yeah, you know, the very overly descriptive, fanciful, Victorian, what are the words?
Latin, in other words, there's a lot of Latin.
There's a lot of language in there, which there's colorful language to describe every single detail of, you know how Victorian women tend to be. So,
It's not just them, it's Charles Dickens, same sort of thing. It's
okay.
wordy.
Okay, yeah, I'm not being fair about women. You're right. Okay, Victorian
Right.
people.
Mhm.
So anyway, very descriptive, and it's hard to follow the story because there's just so much detail put in. For why? I don't know. It's just the way they were back then, and when you're reading that stuff from that period, you just have to expect it, frankly. So,
Sorry.
that's okay. Anyway, so I read some to James, and I was delighted to hear that there was a character named Pauline in the story, and she made it very pretty and everything. So isn't that lovely? And so I get to read through all of this descriptive stuff, knowing all about Pauline, because she gives me great detail. Anyway, and I get to feel like, oh boy, my story is going to work out just awesome in the end because Pauline's does. So I get to leave off the story thinking, my life is going to be awesome, because Pauline's life ended up being quite fantastic after all of the adventures. So, anyway.
How old was she when this was published?
Oh, I should mention that. Now, so I have to admit, I'm going along through the book, and a number of the words, I'm like, what in the world? It's the first time I've ever come across that word. And it could be, it's just a part of, well, that's a different time. So this was a part of language back then, but not so much now, or, but also, honestly, she's much more educated than I am. At age 20, this was published. When she was 20, this was published. And she'd already went through incredible stresses. Her mother had died. Her father had passed away when she was 17, I think. So he'd been the primary caregiver, and he'd given her a moral sort of upbringing. I forgot to mention she's also a poet and an artist. Very, very good artist. If you look up Jane Wells-Webb Loudon, her artwork online, you can find a lot of her artwork. It's been preserved, but you can't find her writings. It's hard to find her poetry, it's hard to find her books, and I would be interested in reading them. And the actual book, rather than this abridgment.
Get it on the stick,
so
libraries.
I'm going to have to get the actual book out at some point, because now I'm frustrated, right? But, what was I going to say? Oh, she wrote something called Conversations Upon Chronology and Domestic Pets.
I want to find out what that chronology is. So
I don't know. I'm interested. That was in 1830. She did that one, and she was born in 1807.
So this is even pre-Victorian, right? Victoria came to the throne in 1837. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so pre-Victorian.
Well, this I don't know how long she lived.
Yes.
Hmm?
Anyway, so because yes, this would have been published when she was
20, I think you were saying.
Yes.
So 27.
So yeah, just
10 years
pre-Victorian.
before
So
Victoria came to the
anyway. So I did like some of her poetry there was a little passage in here, just a little quick poem, and then there was one at the beginning that was to her dad for his birthday, just a little bit, and I thought she wrote quite well. I mean, it was the sort of poetry I like, not complicated stuff like James writes, but
I can write stuff, complicated stuff, but I write unison stuff.
okay.
Some of my songs are really, really
But
good.
I don't know what most of her stuff would be like. I mean, geez, she was only 20 years old when this was published, so for gosh sakes. Now, I had a hard time reading it. As I said, I wasn't familiar with some of the words, and so I had to put it into context and go, oh, okay, well, this is what's happening, or whatever. But honestly, I would not recommend this, because the abridgment is terrible. I had a hard time following what was going on, and it was choppy. Reading it was choppy. And, I mean, to cut out 100 pages is huge. Now,
Did they actually indicate where the cuts were?
No.
My heavens,
No,
that's awful.
it's terrible. And so...
What publisher put this crazy stuff out?
I don't know. Anyway, I want to try to get through this, and then you can go ahead and check it out. But she has different things in here. Interesting. She's very creative, and this book is what caught her husband's attention. Well, to-be husband. Because in this book she mentions all sorts of futuristic sort of inventions that she's come up with, right? That she's placed into
It's like sci-fi.
Yeah, well it is.
Victorian sci-fi.
Yeah.
Or pre-Victorian.
Sure. And so, and she would have been one of the first people to ever write in that genre. And
along with Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
Sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's weird that women were doing it because when I was a kid, I just thought of sci-fi as being a preserve of
men
guys.
sort of thing. Yeah, I know, but it wasn't originally.
Looks like.
Yeah. Anyway, so she was very creative. She had some things like, there was one thing that I was interested in, but I thought, oh gosh, that's really not practical. You know, like there was this, she describes the ladies' fashions and stuff, and she was describing this hat that was a waterfall that, what was it? I should have bookmarked it.
Little glass things?
Yes, it was glass that was propelled around by centrifugal force or something like that. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, I thought, yeah, that's just dangerous. You can't be throwing glass around. So it made it, I guess it was to look like water falling, right? It was just moving glass shards, which, anyway, but creative. And I suppose if it was contained, if you had it like a hat and it was within a plastic sort of dome, right? So that the glass wasn't going to like, you bend over and, oh, sorry, I stabbed you in the eye with my glass shard hat, or whatever, or it glitched and, oh, there it goes, shoots shards all over the stabbing kid's eyes out. Who knows, right? But anyway, so I was going to read a little bit at the end. She's a very different person from a lot of people at the Times, which I will be reading some books that are contemporary sort of authors that are very different. So she was very concerned about morality and where things were going at this time. So she wrote this book with hopes for a better future, and she's putting it way off in the future.
Even after us?
Yeah, because she's like, things are so terrible right now, it's not going to be anytime soon, right? So anyway, so she's worried about that sort of thing. And she was, as I mentioned, she was a very educated woman. She knew several languages, as did her husband. And I mean, if you actually borrow the Mummy from the library, you can get it shipped in through TAL. Don't get the abridgment, as I did. Get the full, complete copy, because this was ridiculous. And you'll see that she's received an amazing education. For her young years, she's put together something that's worth reprinting, and that her stuff is largely lost, besides the artwork and besides the stuff that she did post, like once she was married to her husband. So the stuff that she worked on with him, or influenced in large part by him, has been preserved. Anyway, I'm going to read a little bit that I've bookmarked here. She has a character now. She's put different thoughts into different characters, just like her creativity with the different inventions, whatever. And so it's really, this whole book is about her, really, which is what I think fiction is always about. It's just somebody's view, you know, it's getting into their brains, right? And feeling things out the way they would. So here I'm starting on page 255. This won't help you because you shouldn't be getting this abridgment. So don't go to page 255, because don't get this abridgment. She now also discovered that improvement to be effectual must be slow, that people don't like to be forced out of old habits. till they have seen the effect of new ones proved by experience, and that nothing is so difficult as to improve people against their wills. Increase the resources of a country, throw money into the hands of the middling and lower classes, and they will improve themselves, but at least 9/10 of a population will never suffer themselves to be improved. Those only who have attempted this thankless and painful office can fully estimate the sufferings of the unfortunate Elvira. Blah, blah, blah. So, anyway. So that's, I just wanted to quote that. It gives a good example of the position that she's writing from. She's frustrated because she knows that no matter how much money you throw at society, most of them aren't even going to try. They're not even going to work. They're not even going to pull up their socks and try to improve themselves. And I think she's right about that. Anyway, I think we won't have to worry about that soon.
Why is that?
Well, society's going to crumble. There won't be any more money to throw at people
It could be.
to try to get them to improve themselves. But
There's a recession coming up, and we'll see how well. Possibly, that's what people say. See how well Donald Trump handles it.
But if before all the libraries throw away all their books on you, you can educate yourself for free. Go to your public library and borrow all sorts of items, including
even this.
Things
if
like,
you don't have the other one, grab hold of this. It's worth reading. It's amazing to see someone.
Not the abridgment. Don't get the abridgment.
Well, the thing is,
if you can't get anything else, yeah.
And it's amazing to read someone 20 years old, and some of it would have been written when she was younger, I'm pretty sure.
Well, for sure, because it was published
can
then.
Write that well.
Yeah, and that's a lot of pages that she threw together.
It's very good writing, especially for that age.
For that age, for sure. And given the time period.
Matter of taste.
Yeah. I mean, I have a hard time getting through stuff from that time period anyway. So it's not a reflection on her.
It doesn't bother me. It's stuff from the 17th century, poetry from the 17th century.
So you were going to look into the publisher and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, if we've got time.
Oh, I don't know if we do.
I might have run out of time.
I don't care.
Are you still with us, people out there? Ann Arbor. It's a university press.
Oh my
University of Michigan. As soon as I saw Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor is famous for only one thing, really, I think. Well, it's got an alliterative name. Very nice, Ann Arbor. But, and it means Grace Harbor.
Well, that's unfortunate that they...
University of Michigan did that kind of hatchet job.
Yeah.
Or allowed it to happen. They should have said, get that other 100 pages up.
I'm just going to... These are not very good.
They're a little bit stringy, but...
I'm very grateful for you.
It was good to have the... I ate them with that
we were
bread.
given these piece today.
Very nice.
Yeah.
It's like a taste of summer. It's not exactly a taste of summer we're having out here, but you know what I was thinking?
Huh.
You kind of made an artificial gazebo here. Don't you get a gazebo feeling?
Yeah.
Today? With that up?
Yeah, it makes me feel a little bit warmer. Just in my mental, like I'm feeling like we're.
Well,
see, I always wanted to have a gazebo on the farm, but. See, I wanted to live on this little piece of land that they turned into a gravel pit in PEI.
But
and it had a little...
You wanted to move there before you found out.
Before they turned it into a gravel pit.
Okay.
Because it was my favorite place in the world, most beautiful. My dad had come across it when I was just a little girl, maybe 6 or 7. And it has a little stream.
But it kind of like...
And then it has a pond, and it goes
it's
over.
Almost like little falls, a little cascade.
Very nice. And it has a little pond. And somebody thought, oh, what a good use for this. I'm going to make it into a gravel pit.
Well, part of it over on the other side. The good part was still accessible. But I don't know how far the gravel pit has expanded. Because we were there about over 10 years ago. It was close to 15
I was so
years.
depressed to see it. But anyway, so what was I going to say about that?
Gazebo, you'd like to have one there. Right?
I wanted to have a gazebo right there by where the Babbling Brook meets the pond, because I remember when I was a little girl, I sat in front of the pond and I thought this would be a wonderful place to have a picnic all day long.
Your whole life long.
It was so wonderful. So I thought, I'm going to build a gazebo there one day. And then I'll put a fireplace in the middle. And I'll have it all screened in. And then even when it's cool outside, then I can go out in the fall and I can sit there.